Okay, so we're holding by the third shir on this, the sixth Maim, Eileh Til Shemaim V'Haaretz. And just to make a short recap, I'll show you where we are. We were intending, or at least we said at the end, we said that the purpose now is going to be explaining the Shittuf Midas Harachamim. However, the beginning of this Maimah it's telling us a further reason why it was incompatible, it was undesirable to create the world with Midas Hadin. So even though Olav Machshav Liver Midas Hadin, and we've already explained why, two good reasons why that would be a good idea, both the reason from Shuvi Yisrael, because then that had multiple reasons. Within that reason of the Eibishter being medactic, the Eibishter being begilui, and being dominating, being a scalus of Smola Elyon, all of that would have made everyone obedient. It would have brought them to Shleimus HaAvodah, and it would have brought to the Shleimus HaHemshekh. All those, it just makes the noise a bit.
Oh,
maybe you can open that door in the window over there. Maybe.
It's not really help. Okay, whatever.
So that was the whole Mila. That's why the Eibishter would want to create the world Midas Hadin, according to Shuvi Yisrael, according to Levarov and B'yei Mashmini Atzeres. The reason the Eibishter wants to create the world Midas Hadin is through Davka, only through Midas Hadin Tzimtzum Ha'or. It's the only way possible to create a Yesh V'Dov Nifrod, and because the Eibishter wants to have Tainig V'Melucha, they should have Dvarim Nifrodim that we Mekabel Aleim Malchus Shamayim. There needs to be Midas Tzimtzum, and noch mehr with them that you're going to have Avedis Hanisyonis, and Avedis Hanisyonis is called the Hibna Aveda. But when you have Avedis Hanisyonis, the person is able to reach the Etzman Neshama, and that is really how you're going to bring about the Rebbe. Fine, that's what the Eibishter wants to create the Midas Hadin. In both instances, it would have been too demanding on the person. Sai, mitzad, the presence of the Eibishter, the dominance of the Eibishter, the demands of the Eibishter in Shuvi Yisrael, and Sai mitzad, the Helen Beheston Elikus, the absence, the seeming absence, and abandonment of Elikus, and everyone would have seen such a Helen Beheston and Desh V'Dov Nifrod. It would have been, the person couldn't have held up those nisyonos on such a constant basis. There needed to be Shittuf Midas Harachamim. And now we're going to explain what that Shittuf Midas Harachamim is. But before we did that, we're going to explain another reason, another flaw, so to speak, in the or a complication that would happen if the world would have been created Midas Hadin. And that complication is there would have been a proliferation, an expansion, a increase in Klip and Sitra Achra. And this is primarily, we're talking according to the second Pshat. According to the Pshat in Lulavarov Miyamish Miyatzera, so the Eibishter would have been with Midas Hadin. It would have been at Tzimtzum and there would have been a Helam and Alikus in order to produce a Yesh V'Dov Nifrod. The outcome of that would have been also an increase in Yesh V'Dov Nifrod of things like Klippos and Sitra Achra, not just people, and that would have been a problem. And basically, we did this based on this medrash, Eileh Til Shemaim V'Haaretz, the Eileh Posel L'Surushenim. Ma Posel Tova V'Cheshech. Tova V'Cheshech is a simon on the Gimel Klippos Meis. It's a reference to Gimel Klippos Meis. So the whole point of the Shittuf Midas Harachamim was not only to alleviate the stress points, which would have been achieved in Midas Hadin, Beishis Bar Elikim, that Mitzad Avedis Hashem, that we explained in Shuvi Yisrael and B'yei Mashmini Atzeres. But the act of Eileh Til Shemaim V'Haaretz, of Havai and Elikim, of Shittuf Midas Harachamim, was to alleviate the problem of Tohu Havai V'Chesha V'Gimel Klippos Meis. And so what we've done is we've explained at some length about the impact of Tzimtzum. The impact of Tzimtzum is it provides an opportunity, a possibility for Yinikas Achitzonim. Yeah, and we explained it with the idea of, in the context of Miyat HaYoreach. And we elaborated when you have tzimtzum oil, when there's gilu oil, there's no room for yeshus and afrada. When there's gilu oil, everything is via status. There can be miyut without hester. This is the distinction we made. Tzimtzum doesn't automatically bring about the idea of something becoming menutak, something separate, something detached. That doesn't automatically happen. And that's why you have to understand that it's all well and good having the Tzimtzum Arishin afilu. Even after Tzimtzum Arishin, with the way we described it in Meshmi Atzeres, you have Tzimtzum Arishin, the Ein Sich L'Achra Tzimtzum, the Kaf L'Achra Tzimtzum. It's still, in some, you can say it's a yesh. Okay, it's a yesh, like the Ein Sich L'Achra Tzimtzum, but it's an Eir Poshut. It's Dovuk. Eileh Matzilus. A grace a yesh, right? Iva Chiyu Ichad, Iva Gamu Ichad, it's a Likus. Something's happened, but you're not from Eileh Matzilus going to produce a yesh v'dov nifrod and go weiter dvorin nifrod and the gamri klippers and sitachra. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to. It's not going to be the impact. The production of Eileh Matzilus, as a result, you can have such a tzir in own, so you can have chochmah, and you can have chesed, you can have all these differences. That's only going to have an impact. It's not going to achieve the ultimate purpose of creation. Because tzimtzum mitzad atzmai, and all the common tzimtzum and what we described, it's still within kedusha. I take it there would be a notion of a clipper, but as we said at the year we finished, then there would be the clipper would be completely under the control of kedusha. Be a shema lepri. The whole purpose of a clipper, of a shell, is to protect the pri. It won't be to be menagid lepri. It's not an opposing force. It's a complementary force. Tzimtzum alone is not going to be memayit. It's not that miyut ha'od. It could be it causes a miyut ha'od, but the od is still the same od. Even if you want to use grabaisis, it's favasid. It can be watered down. Watered down elikus. Watered down elikus is still elikus. You need the parsa. When it comes to having the parsa, that creates a helen v'hester on the oid. The oisius hadibur of malchus create a hester on the oid. And once there's a helen v'hester on the oid, people don't even realize where it originates from. And then you can have unikis achitzonim. There's no longer this dveikus, this attachment, this achdus with the original sheirish u'mokeh. It becomes a davar nifrod. And from a davar nifrod, it becomes a davar nifrod legamri, and you can have all the problems associated with klippos and sitra achra. So that's what we explained till now, and that's another reason, as we will hopefully conclude today. That's another reason why shituf midas achamim. If the world had been created purely midas adin, then there would have been an uncontrollable expansion of the realm of klippa and sitra achra and ra. Okay. And now he's going to refer to something from Chaim Vital. You can take this paragraph as a sort of as a tangent. It's like a footnote. It's like I bracketed this off in the flow of the ideas. The Zeu Mashakosu b'Sefer Machberes HaKeitzim of Chaim Vital Zas. This is from a Sefer of Chaim Vital. V'cheinu b'Pris Chaim Sharish Chedesh Perek Beis Dibra Masko Mea. So what does he say over there? The mechetzi chedesh ve'elach maschil hanoiga she neshama lechitzonim la'alois ulefatis hakdusha shachitzonim mefatim meisam lignoiv min hakdusha chuli. So Chaim Vital says that from the second half of the month, remember, if you're looking at each month, the first half of the month, the moon is increasing, and in Od. In the second half of the month, the Od is decreasing. So there's a miyut ha'od. So the miyut, that reflects how, as we described above, that miyut ha'od allows for the emergence of yeshus. When there's gilu Od, everything is bottled, like we said in Perek Vav Tanya. But when there's miyut ha'od, there's a presence of the ashes, right? Like I told you, the Meister Reb Wolf, when we asked Reb Wolf to Fabreng, when we used to come into New York from Montreal, we asked Reb Wolf to Fabreng, he would say, in Granites he can't Fabreng, because he's Kiriv Anitzutz Lamoir, when there's a Gilu Eir by the Rebbe, you can't, it's like you become Ois Metzius. To Fabreng you have to be a shtickle Metzius. Because in Montreal, there's a shtickle weit from the Eir, then there's also a shtickle Metzius you can Fabreng. But where there's Gilu Eir, there's no, to Fabreng you have to have a shtickle Yeshes. So, that's there. The first half of the month, there's Gilu Eir. No, it's not Gilu Eir, the Gilu Eir is increasing. So there's not much room for the klippos. In the second half of the month, Maschil HaNoiga, the klippos Noiga begins. What is the Noiga? The Noiga is the neshama of the chitzonim. The Noiga is the sort of the klippos Noiga is the intermediary between kedusha and the klippos legamri, imu klippos atameis. So the Noiga begins to la'alis lefatis hakdusha, to rise and seduce the kedusha. That the chitzonim of fatim mesa, these klippos, they seduce the kedusha. To steal from the kedusha. Once the eir is being nismayet, as it's decreasing, the klippos are trying to chap a bissel. Because in a state of miut, of tzimtzum, of hester, then the klippos have an opportunity. So it's alternative. This is why it is bringing an example that fits in with what we've been explaining before. But until halfway through the month, there's no fear from the chitzonim, because the gilui is great and considerable. The main expression of tzimtzum and gvura is in the second half of the month. That the explains later in the Chaim Vital that until the first half, for the first half of the month, there's a gilu of chesed. They're not able to derive anything from there because of the gilu. But from the second half of the month, when there's a dominance of gevura and there's a concealment of the eir, that's when the chitzonim are able to overwhelm and overcome this tzaddik kedusha. And through this, it's not just a result of the Helen Vahester, itself is a cause of the Helen Vahester. Through this, that they go and effectively siphon off from kedusha achayis. It further causes there should be a stalkus and therefore there's even greater concealment. And then by coming to be mislab, wherever they're able to derive from there, it becomes enclosed in the state of noiga, which itself is master. So it's all around a greater degree of Helen Behestai. What is the reference? So what does that help us over here? First of all, it associates it with Miyat HaYareach in a sort of a we were talking about Miyat HaYareach Reishis Eishtalshus. Now we're talking about Miyat HaYareach on a monthly basis, on a regular basis, and seeing how this principle of when you have Gilu like in the first half of the month, then there is no Makom L'Chitzenim. When you have Miyut and Tzimtzum Eir, Hester Eir, then there is a Makom L'Chitzenim. There's a Makom for Noiga, not Makom for Chitzenim. Which supports, which is just sort of consistent with what we've been explaining till now, about what would be the impact of creating the world in Midas Hadin through Tzimtzum V'Helen V'Hester Ha'oir. You would have an increase of Klippa, and not just that increase would itself intensify the Helen V'Hester. So, you could say that the original plan was to have a Helen V'Hester to a certain extent. comes along by the clippers drawing on it, it calls it stalkus, it calls it hester, it further accentuates the problems caused by there being a dominance of gvura, of midas adin. The gvura midas adin, you have one objective, and then without the unintended consequences of having the midas adin, which is going to be that people can do avodas Hashem out of nisyonis, and it can be an emes yesh v'dov nifrod, which will give the Eibush an emes of pleasure. The unintended consequence of that would be an expansion of the realm of Klippa and an increase in the Helen Behester. Okay, weiter. Noch an example. We're not. He's just bringing home the point over here. And this is what it says in Eileh. So it came, and it was that day that the Bnei Elikim, the Malachim, came, and they stood before Hashem. And it's known, the Koyal Rosh Hashanah Shnikra Hayom. When it says Hayom, that day, the day with the Hey HaYediyah, the known day is a reference to Rosh Hashanah. Bnei Elikim, and in the pasuk when it talks about Bnei Elikim, these Malachim, it's talking about a particular type of Malachim. The Malachim which are associated with Elikim, which are associated with Din. Heim bechinas shluchi hadin. Sheboim lis yatzi v'lanagid alavai u'lakatri kuli. Who come to stand up. It's not just to stand, it's to stand up to Hashem, to oppose Hashem, to oppose Kedusha, to accuse. These are the klippos. V'hainu, deisha b'Rosh Hashanah hu bekesa, since Rosh Hashanah is bekesa, tiku b'chei the shofar bekesa l'yem chagenu. When do you blow the shofar in the month? Which part of the month? When it's bekesa, when it's concealed. So, the literal meaning of the pasuk is bekesa, where you try to teach it to mean in the date that is fixed. Bekesa means the zman moyed hakavur lekach, the time that is fixed for that. But we also associate the word kesa with concealed. So, when Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of the month, when the moon, there's no light, the mamash tzimtzum, it's the point where the gevuris and the tzimtzumim are b'yesa, before the chesed kicks in and you have an increase in the you have a moment where it's mamash nismayit lagamri, before the new meilut. The mechasi sira, the moon is concealed. The bechinas hester, absolute concealment. So you can understand that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the Rosh Chodesh, which is the end of the last month, before you begin the beginning of the next month, and even then it's still the chesed hasn't really kicked in very much. It's predominantly gevuris, it's a real tzimtzum. Then you have iskavras achitzonim. That's when the klippos, that's when the bnei elikim, the shluchi hadin, can come and try and cause all their trouble and get people punished. That's the objective. But it's through the tkiyah of shofar, through blowing the shofar, we cause it. There should be a sweetening in the gvuras. The inyan hamitu kush mamshichim b'chinas chesed. And the sweetening is the notion of a gilu of chesed, gilu oy. K'mayma Avram asking the kusaya, like it says in the Zohar, that Avram established or fixed the kisei, fixed the throne. Shubchinas hamshachas hagvuris, hamshachas achesed lahamtik hagvuris v'hester. Which is an indication of chesed coming to sweeten gevuris. V'nimshel chinas gilu eir, and there's a gilu eir. Hu inyan shittim mitzarachmin koishis b'ayin. That is the inyan shittim mitzarachmin. So we're starting to get this notion of shittim mitzarachmin. Midas hadin is gvura. Midas harachmim is chesed. The way it's explaining it over here. And so you have the shittim mitzarachmin to sweeten those dinim. And then automatically all of the attempts of the shluchi adin to accuse is completely annulled and removed. And And then instead there's rachamim. Midas harachamim on the Yidden. There's a gil, there becomes a gilui from the Neshamas Yisrael. The Neshamas Yisrael shosh mechinas malchus, because Neshamas Yisrael's origin is in malchus. So Knesset Yisrael humaki v'sheish Neshamas Yisrael, because malchus, Knesset, which is called Knesset Yisrael, is the sheish haneshamis. Ulazais, and therefore, כשנמשך האי במלכוס, when there's a gilui eila chesed in malchus, נמשך גם כן בגילוי בנשאmas Yisrael. All of the things that are transformed l'mayla, you have Skavris HaGvuris, and then you have Amshachas Achsadim. All of this is Nimshach in Malchus. And from Malchus, it's Nimshach to Neshamas Yisrael. Because, as we explained, Mamish right at the beginning, in Rosh Hashanah, that when we talk about Malchus, for sure, and like our whole discussion is, all of Machshav Livres HaOilam, we're talking about Oilam, Livre Midas Hadin. But fundamentally, the real discussion we're having over here is Neshamas Yisrael. And it said right at the beginning. On Gimel. Omnam Ika Kavana here on Neshamas Yisrael. So we talk about it broadly and everything. Then it all comes back to the Ika Kavana is Neshamas Yisrael. So Malchus being the Sheirish Neshamas Yisrael. So if there's going to be a transformation l'mayla, there's a time of Gvurais, when the moon, in the time of the month when the moon is concealed, which is just an indication that there's a miyutai. So it's a time when the shluchi hadin can come and accuse through the aveda of Yidden, through Tkiyah Shofar, we're able to be ma'ira midas achesed, and that midas achesed is able to be mamtik the gevuris. And then ultimately that is nishtalshul and has an impact on us ourselves. That we benefit from the rachamim, the chesed and rachamim, that it's that we sort of will pay. So that's one thing. He says, "Va'oid." Furthermore, the neshamas Yisrael heim mokim haroi legilui oir. Moreover, the neshamas Yisrael are the appropriate place for there to be gilui. Why? Neshamas Yisrael are weird. Saying like they're a strange notion within the broader Seder Shtalshlus. Everything goes through Seder Shtalshlus. Ordinarily, comes a yesh, v'dav, nifrad, and all these things. The shamas stand the shtikalikus. They go through everything, but they never lose their alikus shabadav. They don't lose the fact they're from originating in the matzilus. And the neshama is something other. The neshama is not the same as a malach. The neshama is not the same as a sphere of Eileh Mabriya, sphere of Eileh Ma'asiyah. And the neshama has this sort of different identity. And as such, when there is gilu'ay, Atzilus, you can have a gilu'ay. It's going to proliferate throughout the whole of Seder Shtalshlus. There's a reason why there are tzimtzumim alamas v'esteirim. You can't just change the ingredients. You take something in one oilam, you can't just increase the oil. What's going to happen when you increase the oil? You're going to have a shvira. There's a reason why you have these tzimtzumim. If you're going to change the combination, the equilibrium between Gilui and Hester, or a normal thing would struggle to manage and cope with it. You can't just change the nature of existence. Al derech zeh is like when you have a nest. When you have a nest, you have bittul, you have a complete shiddud marachas hateva. You completely undermine, you break the rules of nature. The teva of that thing you override it. It's like you push override the context of the thing, because the Dava Gashmi has its rules. Even b'shas Maisa, when the sea is being split, noch out the teva hamayim is to be nimshach lamata. The laws of gravity still exist, and it's still the teva of the water to be nimshach lamata. It's just what? They were suspended for a moment. You suspended the rules. But you have to constantly suspend the rules in order for it not to revert back to itself. The Ruach Kodim Oza, Kol Alayla. It had to be there, Kol Alayla, Kol Alayla. If you're changing something's nature, it had to be. Yeah? So, but a neshama is a whole different thing. A neshama is a kli royu legilu. It can cope, it can tolerate, it can be makabel, an increase in oil. So when a yid is not so perfect, and there's existence of chas v'shalom, chet and ovin, hasn't behaved perfectly, the reality is this is something external and superficial to the person themselves. When a yid chas v'shalom is when a neshama chas v'shalom engages in something which a neshama shouldn't engage with, then it's not the pshat that they then become a chita. They then become a sinner. They then become that's their identity. That affects them. Be'etzem. No, it's a davar neisav al etzem. They remain a neshama kedosha, neshama tahira. They have a davar neisav. They have this external thing which is sugaklep, which is just attached to them. It's not them. It's something external to them. How is it davar neisav? Here you have the star. It's in the Sifrei Maharal Prague. Zatzal, K'dei Meshu B'Sefer Gvuris Hashem, Aimashkov Sefer Netzach Yisrael. If you look in the footnotes, it gives you references to all the places in Gvuris Hashem and in Netzach Yisrael and a few other places as well, I believe. And in the places in Chassidus also, where it quotes this point, Mamash B'Shem Maharal. HaHefesh Ben Yisrael La'akim. The difference between the Yidden and the Eiv Avodah Zarah. The Akul mean be'etzem ra. The Eiv Avodah Zarah or be'etzem ra. That is their identity. Im yesh b'm davar toiv, and when an Eiv Avodah Zarah does something good, how is their davar noisef? That by them is a chiddush. What is b'pshitas klippen sitrach and ra? They do. It's not saying they don't do something. They can't do something good. For sure, they can do something good. But that good that they do is a chiddush davar. It's not something which is natural to them, and it's not something even after they do it that becomes synonymous with them and identified with them. There's them, and then they did something good. They remain two separate things. Sorry, but Yidin are. And the neshama is fundamentally good. Whenever there is something chas v'shalom negative by a Jew, it's something that is treated as superficial, external, and not their fundamental truth and identity. So since Yidden don't become, a neshama never becomes, a neshama is nishtalshul, so the Eileh is free, Yetzir, Asiya, Eileh Hazeh, engaged in Eileh Hazeh, is misanik, in Tanugi, Eileh Hazeh, and the Klippus Neiga, and if Chas v'Shalom even weiter chet v'oven Shtolish Klippus Atmeis. So you think, this neshama is mamash ayesh v'dov nifri b'fnei atzmei, you're going to all of a sudden blow a shofar. It's going to be there's going to be a gilu eir hachesed. It's going to be nimsha and racham tferes and rachamim. It's going to be nimshach in malchus tatzilus sheish shamas yisrael. And this yid is going to receive a gilu eir. What's he going to receive a gilu eir? Is a yesh v'dav nifri. It's going to be a clash. He's going to have to stop being the yesh v'dav nifri that he is in order to have this gilu eir. You can't. What do we say in Perik Vav in Tanya? This was a lot of this is miyusud on the Perik Vav in Tanya, which we quoted. We quoted over here, no? Yeah. So the page in Tanya. That to be makabel the chayes has to be, you have to be a bittul. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu shoyle, that was a bottle etzli yisbarach, right? As we say in Perik Vav. It has to be bittul. So this guy's not bottle. He's a yesh v'dov nifrod. He's a chet. He does chatoim avonos. You have to understand that by neshama that doesn't have. It's like ultra orthodox back. It's not him. He has a whole pekel of chatoim v'avonos and daf truvaton. For sure, daf truvaton. It's not like it has no. It's no relevant. It's not like irrelevant. It's a pagam. It does affect the neshama, but doesn't affect the fundamentals of the neshama. The etzem neshama. The etzem neshama bleibt gut. The etzem neshama is rein, is pure, is tahiri. And so when there's a gilu oir, that neshama remains a kli ro'yu lahagilu. He deserves that gilu. Deserves it. He's suited to it. It's not a clash. There's no clash. The davar shebikdusha by Yid there's never a clash. He doesn't have to press pause on anything. Because everything is anyway a davar noisef. It's a separate thing. It's an important musahaska. From the Maharal, it's a Yisoid Godel in Avodas Hashem. Sai b'negei la'atzmai, in your own Avodas Hashem, to understand this, to appreciate that you're who you are be'etzem, and not allow yourself to listen to the klugenker when, like it says in Tanya, that it's all part of the process. That it make that the hisbonenus about your maimed umatzav, when you think that being mori the chushbana, you make a cheshbon nefesh, and you realize that taki you're not so good, and the point isn't to chashron go into atzlus and atzvus, and to be depressed about it. It's the opposite. It only means as a tool to motivate you to go high, and it's not because it's not just a strategy, because and you're lying to yourself. Really, I'm a lowlife. Really, after my cheshbon nefesh, it seems like I have no shaychus. I'm yesh v'dov nifrod legamri. That's not the reality. The reality is because I'm be'etzem a davar toiv, a davar shebikdusha. It should wake up in a person a tremendous tsar and pain that person is engaged in all these things. How can something which is so kodesh, so tahir, that can never be contaminated? There's no tumung in the world that can be matamad the meida ani from a yid, right? That is the etzem of a Jew, but so it's pasnished, and it should bother a person that they're not behaving the way they should behave. But it's not to get into a mentality to think that this is my real identity, because all that's going to do is going to slap the person lower, chas v'shon. And that's negela atzmai, negela hazulas, alachas kama v'kama. You don't have to make a cheshbon nefesh about somebody else. None of your business. For the other, you look at another person as being tachlis hakdusha and tachlis hatara. And it's mamish, everything is a davar noisa. Everything you see in another person, anything negative, chas v'shalom, is first of all, if you see it, it's a simon that you have it in yourself. It's the only reason you're seeing it. And the reality is, all these things are mamish dvarim leisafim. It's not your business. You might think, if I'm going to go to this other Jew, how am I going to have a pu'ula? How am I going to impact on them? Limud HaTorah, Kiyum HaMitzvahs, put on tefillin, light Shabbos candles. They're so weit, there's so much chet, so much oven. You have to understand, you're not talking to the chet v'oven. That's not them. All of that personality, that persona, and identity they project is not their reality. You have to understand that a kli royu, what is the lashon here? The kelim ru'uyim lahagilu oir. Everyone is a kli royu lahagilu oir. V'lachein. End of Abraham. V'lachein, b'reish Hashanah, shenim sheslichas havenis, hu b'chlal asoros hakitrugim chuli shenase yitkiyas sheifa. So on Rosh Hashanah, which is the time when people are forgiven for everything, and generally there's a removal of all of the accusations, which is achieved through Tkiyas Sheifa, because Tkiyas Sheifa is fundamentally tied up with Tshuva. Can Abdir Maskul Shuvi Yisrael? Yeah, the Tshuva comes from Etzem HaNefesh. Harim Ismale Rachamim Shenim Shachagilo Ibn Shams Yisrael. That's why in Rosh Hashanah you have the hemshekh of Rachamim, and who does that Rachamim go to? It goes to Shams Yisrael, because they're Kelim Ru'uyim Lahagilu. Again, we've seen this pattern. We're just reinforcing this pattern. When there is tzimtzumim, when there is din, when there's gevuros, there's the opportunity for unikas achitzonim. That's why the boy b'nei elikim is yatziv alavaya. And then it dafkes only through shit of midas arachamim, through the kiyashefa, tshuva, you can have the hemshekh. But this point about it being going to the mokim haroi, that when you're ma'ira, this taste for when you ma'ira, when you're aroused, that there should be a greater revelation of kedusha and godliness and elikus, that it goes to neshamas yisrael davka. This is also an important component, as we're going to see, that you need to ensure. There's two ways in which klippa can be makabel. We said one way is through tzimtzum, and another way is the complete opposite, through a gilu oir, which is higher than ishtalshlus, an intensity of oir. Why? Because from that madriga, there's no difference between good and bad. That when you have an intensity of oir, from Chesed's perspective, Chesed is fanatical about Gilui. Just cares about Gilui. Doesn't care who it's been megaleh to. Just like we talk about, this is the whole thing. Chesed is about Gilui. Gvura is about Tzimtzum. And Tiferes is about managing the Chesed, that what it should go to the right place. Because once you just have a bizbazah yitzvah, everything is just completely revealed, then it overflows into everything. So the klippers also benefit. So you can't just have a gilu oir. We said before, you have to be bottled to be makabel the gilu oir. We're talking, that's in a gilu oir and say dishtalshus. And with that, for sure, the klippers can't be makabel in a pneumius. They're not kalim pneumium, but they can makabel them up in the makif. So we say that klipper can be makabel. One method is tzimtzum oir, and one is from the makif. Because in the makif, there's no difference. If you want, you can look in Podav Shalom Ranat, where it has a nice arichas explaining this, and also in the hemshekh in Tovshin Dalet, which is based on Podav Shalom Ranat. I can't remember what the first maimon. Podav Shalom. I can't remember what it is in Tovshin Dalet. Has a little bit more barichas. But if you want to fully get a good categorization of how the klippus are makabel their unika. One is from tzimtzum oir and one is from the makif. So here you have another problem. It can become, once you sort of tkir sheifa and you tshuva from etzem hanefesh and you megala gilu oir otzum, the klippers can also benefit from that. So you're back to square one. So you may be on a higher madrega, you have a gilu oir, but the klippers have also been strengthened. So you've just pushed everything up a madrega. You still got the same problem. So this is why we don't want to have, the end game is not just to have midas harachamim. The end game is to have shittuf imay midas harachamim. You want to have midas hadin with midas harachamim. Because by being with midas harachamim, the midas harachamim can, which is tzimtzum, it can control where the gilu oir from midas harachamim goes to. So you have the gilu oir elyon, but it goes to the right place. It goes to neshamas Yisrael. And it doesn't just get dispersed and picked up in all the wrong places. Yeah? But we're going to say that at some point soon. Okay, now we have another shtickle. The ISIS are a bit difficult, but you'll see. Again, weiter, the same, similar nakuda. Uvezer yuvam. And from this it's understood. Gam ke masha kosu bezeya chilek alef tachsadik heyomid beis. So this is a shtickle zaya. What does it say in the zaya? The zaya is miyusud on the pasuk, on this pasuk in Keheles. Eilecha eret shemalkech noar. Woe to you, a land, a country where your king is a child, is a fool. the koi al masha kosuf, which this goes on the pasuk until in na hayisi gamzol kanti, that I was young, but I was a fool, and I also got old. The sari shel Esav Amru. This is a reference to the sar of Esav. V'hainu matat. This is a reference to matat.
Metatron.
Hmm?
Isn't it funny Metatron?
Metatron, yeah. You say matat. I think in English they pronounce it Metatron or something. Something like that. The archangel of evil. Right? The Inyan. Eileh eretz. And the meaning when it says, woe to you, a land, hulafishim, is a hemshekh unikas achitzenim. Why is it a woe? When Malkich Noar, when Malchus is nimshach to Naar, when you have Amshach and Malchus in Naar, in Matat, in Klippa, then you have a unikas achitzenim. If what doesn't make any sense, doesn't make sense seemingly, because if matat is a malach elyon, right? Imke now my nimshach nichzenim misham. How from matat do you get inikas achitzenim? Could be sar shel Esav. How does it work? How does it transfer from being a madrega in at least from Malchus to Atzilus into the malachim elyonim in Bria? Where does this unikas achitzoin? Where does it all go wrong? Where does it all get siphoned off and transitioned? We said before that you can have klippa, but the klippa is muknoim tachas hakdusha, and it's a shema lepri. This is why we describe that. That's the ideal state. How does it become a unikas achitzoin in mamish? But according to what we said above, it will make sense. It's all good. Keep pirush nar hu ampi zutre. What does it mean when it says nar? Nar is a young child, right? Ampi zutre, a small face. Hu inyan miut. Just go with the flow, okay? We're not going to pick on every word. You can understand the ramazim in each of these things is move on. Obviously, if you learn it more be'iyun, you'll be able to get a deeper imak, but that's not our inyan over here. It's like the Rebbe Rashab once said. I think it was in Ein Ches. One of the later years in Rostov, the Rebbe Rashab said a Maimah and came to Chazara, and there was a shtickle in the Maimah, a shtickle Kabbalah in the Maimah, and the Chazrim found it difficult. They didn't know. So in the Chazara they asked questions. They asked the Rebbe Rashab Shailas in the Kabbalah, in the Zoya, whatever. And the Rebbe Rashab sort of, I think if he said, it's no spittle. It was like machmit the hand or something. This is in the Rishimus of Yaakov Landau, the former Rav in Bnei Brak. He was there. He was one of the Chazrim. So there he said, I think the Lashon was verdig gebeten learning Kabbalah. Who asked you to learn Kabbalah? Like that part of the Maimah was left after negate to you so much. So obviously, it's not that we're not going to learn it. We're going to have a concept of it. But the kavanah, bringing in the Kabbalah and everything, is not to. This is vich verstehen. Sometimes it's different. My more different. Sometimes it's a different story. But a lot of these times it's like we say in Rosh Hashanah, you bring psukim. Why do we say psukim of Malchus, Shefes? To bring a raya from the Torah on the hamshach that has to be done by the Tkir Shefer. So when the Rebbe says Chassidus, sometimes they bring a raya from the Torah Shabbat Peh. So you bring a raya from the thing about pasuk, just like a dibra maskel. The whole thing is the dibra maskel is the pasuk. That's the point of Chassidus, to explain a pasuk in that pasuk, so you can know pshat in Torah. The pasuk is, as we say, is like a passport. It's just a way into the inyanim, to the pnimius HaTorah. So a lot of times when he brings the Kabbalah, he has to bring a raya from the Torah, and you've got to understand Pirush HaMilas. You've got to have a basic understanding of what's going on. Otherwise, you won't understand the references because the whole of Chassidus is full of references to concepts in Kabbalah, but you gotta have a balance about how much you're gonna dedicate to these things. So a child is the Bechinas Ampi Zutre. So a small face is the idea of miut, of something small, is reduced, is limited. So it's a reference to miut. And to help you understand it, that's the difference in Kabbalah and Chassidus. Kabbalah is statements, is Asius. Chassidus is Havana Ba'asaga. With everything. So you have a line. Do you want to understand? You want to understand the Kabbalah? You have to understand the difference in Seichel Shalna and the Gabi Adam Gadol. These Kabbalah Isius, Ampi Zutre, Ampi Ravrave, big faces, small faces. Take a step back. What's the difference between an Adam Gadol and a cotton and a nar? The difference between a Chacham Gadol and a nar. The Yosim is Erichuk Erich. Sorry, let's get on. Yeah, the Chain Midis, Vav Ketzavis di Yitzira, Lagabi Midis, di Atzilus, Hukamei Nar, Lagabi Adam Gadol. So, why are we picking on Yitzira? As we know, Chachma, Abila, Mekanana, Ba'atzilus. The Chachma is the dominant feature of Atzilus. Bina is the dominant feature of Bria. Zah is the dominant feature of Yitzira. So, Zeh Ampin, we're talking about, the small face. So we're talking about the Na, we're talking about Zah. So what is the reference to? The reference is to the Vav Ketzavis, the 6 dimensions of Yitzira. 6 dimensions of Yitzira is a reference to Zah of Yitzira. In contrast to the Midas Atzilus. In Atzilus, there's if you want to compare Zah, which is the Zeh Ampin, the small face, there's small faces and there's small faces. So the small face of Yitzira is going to be considerably smaller than the small face of Atzilus. Yeah? There's a shtalshlus, there's a miyotay. So the Yosem is Erich again. And that is comparable to the difference between the seichel of a child and the seichel of a great person. They both have seichel. It's the same. We're talking about Zah and Zah. But within Zah, you have a range. So that is our moshel to try and understand it. The child and the Chacham Gadol. And because in our posuk we're using Nar Yisi, Malkech Na'ar, talking about the idea of this. This is our reference in the Pesukim. But he says, our human moshel, our moshel on it is one way to conceptualize it. But when we're talking about Zav Yitzir, Lagabi Zav Atzilus, is Yosem the Richuk Erich is phenomenal. L'chein nikra matat hedyot. That's why matat is called a hedyot. K'misha kosu b'zeya hedyot iyu Lagabi Mori is a hedyot, is a simpleton. Lagabi, the master. The concept of a hedyot is where the oid is very mutzumtzum. Very simple. There's no gilu oid of seichel, no gilu oid of middays. Pashat. Like in contrast, when you talk about koin and koin hedyot, Kana Rabo, you talk about the koin gadol. Kana Rabo, it's in Kabbalah. You see they talk about Kana Rabo, gilu oid chesed, and the koin hedyot will be a tzimtzum oid. It's still isha chesed, but it's still bechinas miut. That's the inyan of a hedyot. So since matat is called na'ar, and from our other understandings of na'ar is ampizutre, you're talking about miut v'tzimtzum. So we asked the question, how from matat can they be nikis chitzainim? Because in matat there is a miut v'tzimtzum, which is exactly the same thing we're talking about over here.
Right.
Is it been ma'isiv anything? No, it's just within the context of the Kabbalah of the Zayah, you see it the same thing. B'zel shekosu b'zeh chelik aleph taf yutes amid beis v'ahi klipa chuli matas legabe anpei zutri chuli upirish mikdash melech hainu matat v'sandal. The context of the Zayah over there, I don't know. I haven't looked it up. And if you want, you can. There's another reference. The Ampi Zutre to Matat and Sandal. These are the clippers, the Sheisha clippers. For Hainu Shemisham Rotzeli Linik, Lianik. Al Yidei Shesham Kavanis Mata Ha'in Miyat Achamiyat. Because in Matat and Sandal there's already been a Miyat Tzimtzum, that's why the clipper wants to be Makabel from there. Because in a place where there's Tzimtzum Miyat, that's where you can be Makabel from. The Sibas is Havas Ahi Klippa who mipnei Miyat Yareach. And it all goes back to the origin. Why was there Bechlal this clipper in the first place? Because there was the reduction in the Eir HaYareach. Ma'iris Chassid, like it says in the Pasuk, Ma'iris, without the Vavim, Shenistaleka Eir Vagilu L'mayla. And that's why this clipper. Ishloima, there's only Nistalkas Achsadim, Amuvosham Bezayah, and a bracket. So a bracket within a bracket, not mamish a bracket, but it's like as a side point. But he's explaining Yoni Zayah. This is what it means also in the Zayah, where it talks about the Stalkas Achsadim, the removal of the Chasadim. Achsadim, Ubechinas Gilu Eir, Ba'im Ashkos Beis Chaim, Shamita Yerech Perik Beis, Laidea Kitruk, Olu, Hatesvir, Shalala Maila, V'nichlu Bezachuli. So the Tesvir is a Malchus, Eileh, and they were included in Zah. This is the Miyata Yereach is Malchus. Miyata Yereach is Malchus. This is the Tzimtzum of Malchus, which goes back to all of our Arichas in Yom HaShmini Atzeres, the Yeshus, the Yeshus Ha'oisius of Malchus to Atzilus. It's the same notion over here. What this causes is Histalkus Ha'eirach Sodim, everything is Nismayet, everything is the Helen Behester Eirach Atzilus. What's the Helen Behester Eirach Atzilus? This is what we're talking about here, the Silica Chsodim. That's from the same minion. And all that is Nimshech from Malchus to Atzilus, the Yereach over here, the Malkech, the Isius, Vusibus Yeshus Halavushel, like he said, Beferish. Vusibus Yeshus Halavushel, Isius Chuli Kanal. This is the whole course, because you have all these Simtsumim, and you have the Yeshus Ha'isius, which is, go back, spend some time in the Lavarover again, and you'll see the connection, what we're saying. But Arazu Mistateres Misalemes Baha'isius. This Ha'ara Sa'ir, which is after all of the Tzimtzumim, becomes enclosed and concealed in the Isius, to the point where there's only a very Mutzumtzum Dika'ir. And Zeu Sibus is Havis HaKlippis. So why there's only Klippis? The same reason why you have the Yesh V'Dava Nifrat, who's able to do Avedis HaNisyonis, and is able to Mekabla Alav Eumachus Shemayim, and calls the Tainig Melucha, is the same reason why you have all these Klippis and Sitra Achra. So maybe one step forward, but it's two steps back. So here you have a very important paragraph. So now we're going to conclude this point, which is, you spent a good while on expounding and drawing the point out. But because the Asius is sometimes quite difficult, you get to tumult. But you got to remember that this is so Nimsa Muvah Mikol Zeh is from this whole point. from starting all the way from the beginning. So that through creation being a product, an outcome, a result of purely midas hadin, bechinas bereshis bara elikim, like it says in the Torah, the meaning bereshis bara elikim, elikim gemat is midas hadin, shu bechinas hahelem vahester, which as we've described is the utter concealment of the oil. Then, as the pasuk continues, nimshach al yidei zeh va'aretz ha'isatoyu v'vayu v'cheshech. That's the pshat. When Bereshis bara elikim, then ha'aretz ha'isatoyu v'vayu v'cheshech. Shematzias ha'klipis v'asiter achra. V'zehu lefi pirush habeis. This is all according to the second pirush, the pirush of Levaravim Yemash Mini Atzeres, where the midas hadin is the pshat lahalim ulahasdichuli. Yeah? Va'afgam lefi the pirush harishon shnis boilel. But you can also use the same outcome, it's the same pshat also in the first pirush. Meaning, it's not the same pshat, because obviously it's saying, as we said earlier in Yemash Mini Atzeres, it's the opposite pshat, right? It's not the same pshat. It's not about Helen Vehester. It's actually about Gilu'ah. So how's it the same? Meaning you'd have the same outcome too. You'd also have Hisavas HaKlippus Vasitra Achra if the pshat in Midas Adin is like it is in Shuva Yisrael. The Masha all of Machshav live Midas Adin ubichdei ledaktik imoim nis yirsa einish. So the simple meaning of Midas Adin is what the Eibishter wanted to be very exacting with people. So there should be yirsa einish. There should be this fear of punishment. That was our first pshat, which we gedreit a bissel because we were that you want people shouldn't serve Hashem the garmei for their own needs and their own purpose, and that's a negative thing. That itself is a klipper. But we said it's better than doing an avera. Yeah, remember. B'chtei sheyish shomu min achet, u'b'chtei sheyish shleimus haveda chuli. So not just that, but also shleimus haveda. So we had the whole three things that we described in Shuva Yisrael on Amud Chav Zayin. So Chavav and Chav Zayin over here, we had our three things. Now, in order for that to be a meaningful threat, it's all well and good someone threatening. How do you threaten someone that they're going to be punished and for them to be scared? There has to be a realistic punishment, a way of being punished. Part of creating the world in Midas Hadin is not just creating the world with a threat. It's creating the world with a threat that you can actually fulfill. So how can the Eibishter show that he's going to fulfill his threat? If you step one step out of line and you're not Mekayim Torah mitzvahs and you don't have Yiras Shamayim, you're going to get punished. And then the person has Yiras Ha'inish. There has to be an Ha'inish. Has to be Metzias Ha'inish. They'd say about how hard it is to be from here. He goes, I think the B'ditchever said, if the Eibishter would have put all of the Taivas Elam Hazeh in a book and Elikus in the world, then it wouldn't be such an Isayin. What does the Eibishter do? He puts all of the Elikus in the Torah in a Sefer, and all the Taivas Elam Hazeh is in front of our eyes. Right? So, if the Eibishter would have created the world with all these threats, but these threats would have been theoretical. Yeah, the Eibishter was just some. It was just talk. It was just in theory. Then you know what? People would have been able to ignore it, and it wouldn't have had an impact. Things that have an impact is what you see with your own flesh again. You see the reality. So, since the Eibishter wanted to create the world in such a way, according to the first pshat, where it would be medactic with people, and there should be yiras ha'inish, people should be shomim min achet. So, in order for that project that to work, there has to be people who can punish. There has to be means of punishment. Otherwise, the whole thing is just a theoretical threat. It's not real. And who are the shluchi adin? These klippos, which he uses the lashon from Isaiah, think it's from the Zion. Yeah. Shehem Ritzua Elakah. They are the whip of Elikus. So the Eibishter has his ways, clip and tzedakah to cause, to punish people, to make life miserable for people. Shehem HaGvuris HaKoshes. These are the really intense Gvuris. Shezeu Chayusum K'Shapelim Ara. They get chayus, they get a kick out of doing evil things. Shem Eina Mechabim L'Toiva. And their kavan is not the Toiva. We're not talking about the Yetzer Hara, if Tanya, like the commercial Azayna Shebazeh HaKadosh. You know, that's a halbetzara. We're talking about Kiyim Kavanosum Ilahanish Mamish. It has to, you can't, because you know what? Once you start saying that their kavanah was L'Toiva, then it's not a real punishment. You've got to have people that are sadistic. They possibly get pleasure out of causing pain. They're not doing it for anything else. They're not doing it in order to prove that you're, they're not like the Zayn in the Zayah HaKadosh. They're not there to somehow bring out the best in you. No, to be a real Yirza Einesh. You know, because Kozaman, when you think there's a way out, you'll do the Aveira, you'll pay the punishment, and you'll move on. Because you know the punishment is mugbal. You know, the person, there's limits. There's the Geneva Conventions. You're not going to get tortured to such an extent. And that means that you can make a cheshbon. Is it kedai? Maybe it's worth my while. So I'll sit in prison. I'll get 3 meals a day. I'll be looked after. It won't be so terrible.
I'll once for then I'll become big celebrity when I come out.
You know, so there's a way of justifying. So the Eibishter really wanted midas hadin and people to be taka scared and to be shomim in achet and to have that type of lachats and pressure on person. Then you have to have emes shluchi adin, people who the means by which you could sort of mamish destroy the person's what gvuris koshes, and they do it kavon not l'toivoscha, to be mavari you, and so you can have you can go through all of these birurim. So when you go to Gan Eden, you'll have an easier time. None of that. Just poshet hurting you, and they get a mamish chayas out of doing this. Because the be'etzem ra, the only thing they get chayas from is doing ra. In the Frierdiker Rebbe, in the Rishimus HaMaisa, talked about the jailer that he had. He would say that the day when he has to torture a prisoner, he doesn't have to put sugar in his tea. Because the zizkeit, the geschmack from it sweetens his, das is a madrega. This is the sort of the evil you're talking about. And like it's explained in many places, that what is the origin of good and evil? It's the chesed and gvura of Atzilus. Hari mechanim adin b'shem ra. So even though you say, how can you say that something gvura da Atzilus is a sheidish of ra gomu? It's Atzilus, Elikus. Nevertheless, hari mechanin hadin, the outcome of the din and the gvura is ra. That's what happens. That was the outcome. You have the means by which there can be punishments. So, not just according to the second pshat of Lulav Aravim Yimashmini Atzeres, where there's hell and Vehesta Ha'oir, that's going to allow for the expansion and the increase in Klip and Sitra Achane Savas Hara, Toyu Vabayva Reshis Barlikim, the Tzimtzum Ha'oir causes Toyu Vabayva Cheshakim Klipis Atmeis. Even according to the first pshat of Shavi Yisrael, where Hashem is medaktik b'yosem, b'reishis bar elikim, when there's elikim and everything is very strict, then you need a toyu v'ayva cheshech to make that work, to keep everyone in line. U'bechinas midas adin b'sharshi, u'bechinas tachlis akdusha, for sure midas adin in its sheidish rishon, in gvurat atzilus, is tachlis akdusha. But through Tzimtzumim, from Kedusha, you can get this Ra Gomu. And so we've seen Sai like the first Pshat, Sai like the second Pshat, a problem in creating the world in Midas Adin. In addition to the inevitable problems which were highlighted in the Shuvi Yisrael and Lulav Arav and Yimashmini Atzeres, that this would be too much, too overwhelming and too demanding and unachievable for Bnei Adam, for just a human being can't manage a world which was Bereshis Bar Elikim. He needed a world which is Eileh Toledot Shemayim Ba'aretz B'Yemid Baram. Yeah. So you need to have Havai and Elikim. You need to have the Shidduch Mitzarachim in Poshet to breathe, to cope, for two completely different reasons. But more than that, a further problem is how Sai, according to that Pshat, Sai, according to the second Pshat, the world would have become overrun with intensity of evil, which would have ruined the whole project, undermined everything, been too much. Had to find a way to sort of somehow control the intensity of the klip and the ra that was going to be in the world. So you had to have shittat midas arachim. Okay, so that's sort of the end of the first part of the Maimon. But the next part of the Maimon, Posha very geschmacke, and it's mamshayich and avoid in thinking. It's going to also give an extra pirush or an extra elaboration of this point about what is when you how they're going to be, how in a person in their avodas Hashem, how they can also develop ra, bad midas. From kedusha, we were talking about from kedusha can be nishtalshul ra gomor. He's going to give us an example how in a person can dam ba'avoda, they can have hisponenus, and davka such a avodas Hashem makes them intolerant and angry people. Anyone who doesn't daven ba'avoda like them is garnished and schlecht, and he can't stand people who aren't so heilig and aren't so chassidish as him. So davening ba'avoda, tachlis hakadusha, and yet from that is nishtalshul these midas rois the chassidish bachrim have. How's that? So that's what we're going to say in the next part. About why people get angry and frustrated with other people. That's another example about the existence of klippa as that can come about. And he's going to say, how do you overcome that? How do you overcome your midas rois? Think you're shabacha, and yet you're angry and frustrated all the time with all these other people who don't appreciate, I'm davening ba'avoda and they're making noise. Don't they realize that I'm a chassid yid? Don't they have respect for me? Respect for Talmidei Chachamim? So from the tachlis hakadusha of, thinking and davening.
There are certain boys though that they're on a different level.
Oh, you're gonna see.
Some lahachas.
Okay. No,
but stand on your table and wiggle it about, and talk and say, so Levi, tell me you talking to me before.
As we said before, everyone is better some type. That's a double nicer on them. You're looking at them completely the wrong way.
Yeah.
Anyway, you'll see. So just to make you excited for next year, it's Pasha Geschmacke piece about that, and then we'll see why you need to have what by seeing the impact of Midas Hadin more broadly, and now we're seeing it. How you can understand then once you change the recipe, and you somehow you have the shit of a Midas Arachamim. You see what gets changed now, and how things are altered and affected, and obviously they affect things differently according to the first pirush, according to the second pirush, and in all the broad things. We've got a much more complex situation, and as we introduce Midas Arachamim, we're going to see the impact it's going to have and why it's necessary, and how it taka changes things. Because that's going to be, and that's going to set us up for the continuation. It's not. We're not going to finish it in this Maimon because it's going to. The whole third part of the hemshekh is going to continue this way.